We're live.
Awesome. Thank you everyone for coming back for a second night of the MSJC Board of Trustees Candidate Forum, or if this is your first night, well, welcome. My name is James Crawford. I will be the moderator for tonight. And real quick, before we get started with rules and procedures, I want to thank the candidates for agreeing to participate tonight. I want to thank the Political Science Club, which I'm a part of, for putting in an immense amount of effort to put on this event, and then also Student Life and Development for helping coordinate this. And then, of course, thank you to everyone, whether you're at home or wherever you are in the world watching tonight, because without you, there would be no purpose for this event. So thank you. And so I'm now going to go through the rules and procedures for tonight. These were sent to the candidates ahead of time, so they know exactly what the rules and procedures are, but just to inform the audience. Each candidate will be given 1.5 minutes to respond to a question. If they go over that time, we have Taylor, our lovely timekeeper, who will put it in the chat that they have gone over, and then we will have to cut them off. The question style is going to be in a round robin fashion. So what that means is that the first question that we ask will be directed to Mr. Gomez-Kraus, and then to Mr. Silva, and then Mr. Williams. And then the second question will start with Mr. Silva, so on and so forth. And that's how the round robin fashion will work for tonight. But before we get into the actual questions, the candidates will have 2 minutes to give any opening statements or any information that they see as relevant to tonight's forum. And then this is not a debate. We made that very clear ahead of time. This is a forum, a space for us to share ideas, not debate and try to win against one another. And at the end, so because of that, the candidates are not allowed to use one another's names, and there is no time for rebuttals. And at the end of the event, each candidate, or at the end of all the questions, the candidates will be given 3 minutes each to give any closing statements or tie up any ideas that they maybe ran out of time with earlier. So those are the rules and procedures for tonight. Additionally, all of the questions being asked have been provided to the candidates ahead of time as well. So they have had ample time to think about their answer, because these are some really important questions. So before we get into the actual questions, we're going to start with our opening statements, and Mr. Gomez-Kraus, you are first.
All right, so first of all, thank you very much, James, Political Science Club, and Student Life and Development for having us, and thank you to the other candidates who shall not be named for being here as well. My name is Edison Gomez-Kraus. I'm an ESL teacher from Anza. I was born in Chula Vista. I grew up for a time in Mexico. My family are entrepreneurs, so we had an aquaculture farm in Baja California, in a rural fishing village. I came back to finish high school, and I now live in Anza, where I am a member of a growers association. I served on the Anza Valley Municipal Advisory Council, and I'm currently chair of AD 71 on Riverside County Democratic Party's Central Committee. I'm running for teachers and students to have a voice in the Board of Trustees, and our campaign has been endorsed by the Riverside County Democratic Party and Planned Parenthood Action Fund of the Pacific Southwest. So I guess the rest of it will come out in the questions. Thank you for having us.
Of course, thank you. Mr. Silva.
A little bit about myself. Grew up in Riverside, attended Riverside City College, and was elected student body president and student trustee in May of 2000. Transferred to UC Riverside in the fall of 2002, and in the fall of 2003, I moved to Washington, D.C., where I participated in a University of California study abroad program in our nation's capital. So graduating in 2004 with a bachelor's in history, I married my college sweetheart in 2005, a fellow UCR alumnus. That was the same year my wife began a career as a high school English teacher. So I've worked in the community college system since 2007, starting at San Bernardino Valley College, then moving on to College of the Desert in 2016, where I'm currently employed. And I've had very good relationships with my CSEA Chapter 407 leadership, and I'm engaged with the needs of my bargaining unit. My wife and I lived in Riverside until 2010, when we packed up and headed east to Beaumont. And since 2010, I've been involved in a myriad of boards and professional service organizations, serving on the San Gregorio Hospital Board, my homeowners association board, several bond citizens oversight committees, and even being named president of the Beaumont Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors. So even though I is no longer chamber president, is still MC all the Beaumont Chamber events. So in 2020, we doubled in size on September 9th. After fostering twin 3-year-olds for 14 months, my wife and I adopted our girls. So this is the first children for us. My campaign is based on not being beholden to special interests or political parties, but focusing on students' needs and receiving grassroots support from small dollar contributions. I look forward to your vote on November 3rd. Vote Silva for MSJC. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Williams.
Sorry. Thank you, James, and thank you for what you're doing, and thank you for the Political Science Club and the student life. And it's been an awesome experience watching some of the online and most of the online Zoom meetings. Why I'm here and what I wanted to share with you in the beginning is that I know that education can change the trajectory of families in one generation. And it's important that we offer a world-class education to the students and citizens of our region. And I can tell you that a personal example of education changing lives would be my life. I grew up in LA County in the 80s, so older than some of you here. And when I was in high school, I came home from school one day and I told my mom I was going to do a project on going to college. And she said, well, we're poor, we don't go to college. And so, that wasn't really a barrier for me. I was working in heavy equipment and demolition. I became a project manager for a heavy equipment and demolition company and was extremely successful. And I decided to be a career changer. And to be a career changer, I needed to go to a community college. And so I'm a product of a community college. I decided to leave the relatively safe world of demolition to the dangerous world of teaching and education. And I became a literature and writing major and taught English at the high school level. I became a literacy coach, an instructional coach, an academic coach of teachers, helping them to improve instruction and actually helping them to be learning experience designers. I was the architect of our Scholar Plus teaching and learning plan that brought innovation to our school district. And due to that fact, the superintendent appointed me to be, in my current position, the director of technology. So what I want you to know is I'm here to bring a bold vision. I'm here to help with innovation in the district. And I'm here to sort of let you know that there's a lot of change coming to education, and your superintendent is going to need the assistance.
I do have to cut you off, Mr. Williams. We are at the 2 minutes.
Thank you.
But I promise you will have time to come back to all that later. Thank you. So first question will be for Mr. Silva because it's the round robin fashion. What motivates you to become a board member?
There we go. So as a person who's worked in the community college system for over a decade, I've been part of each level. So as a student body president, as a student trustee, as a current employee of the California Community College System, working as a bargaining unit member with CSDA for 13 years. I have direct experience of the day-to-day needs of classified staff, coupled with my elected experience as the vice president of the Beaumont Unified Board, gives me the breadth of experience to start day one. Due to those experiences, that is why I have made the move to run for this position on the MSJC board. I can make a brighter impact on the future of our region, and than I can at the K-12 level. The future is bright. With more rooftops arriving by the day and more businesses seeing opportunity because of the growth, MSJC can be a regional leader in the future of the Inland Empire. Maximizing our partnership with our K-12 partners in Trustee Area 1 in Banning, Hemet, Beaumont, and Temecula Valley. A collaborative effort I am really engaged in to begin bring unity to our region. In addition, I've served in our nonprofit sector as well as the former president of the Beaumont Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors, where I learned the value of prioritizing costs and balancing priorities with limited budgets. I've served on the MSJC Measure AA Citizens Oversight Committee since 2016, where I'm intimately aware of the disbursement of funds, making sure that money is being spent on the things promised to the community when the bond was passed in 2014. I have a plan, I have the experience, and that's why I should be your next trustee for MSJC. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Williams, same question for you.
Thank you, James. So when I became a teacher, I sort of adopted part of the mission statement from Cal State San Marcos, and that was to collaboratively transform education. And that stuck with me. And it stuck with me because when you're trying to affect change, you need to bring people with you, right? So when I'm working with people and I'm helping them improve, I always ask that they bring something else along with them. So what motivates me is, like I said in my intro, is that I want to bring a world-class education to this region. I want to bring to the college an innovation roadmap where we're tying everything together, from Banning and Beaumont to Calamasa to the new beautiful campus in Temecula. And I think that if we're looking at the facilities master plan and we're looking at innovative spaces, we need to tie that together. And what motivates me is that the students of this region deserve a world-class education. And I can tell you that change is very difficult. It is very difficult, and the college is going to need to know that sometimes, you know, you need to be brave and you need to take a step forward, but sometimes people will play safe and step back. We need to not step back. We need to step forward, and that motivates me to run for this board.
Thank you. And then Mr. Gomez-Kraus, same question.
Thank you. So the first part, and I think is not the most important, but it is very important, helping to dismantle the school to prison pipeline. It doesn't end at K-12, it continues. And in order to do that, we have to address the main reasons why students will drop out of college and, well, not even go to college in the first place. By increased outreach to a homeless and transient youth, for starters, that needs to happen. Guaranteeing teacher and student safety on campus is now one of the main priorities. Improving racial equity at school with training for teachers to understand where their students are coming from, what their lived experiences are, and mostly just connecting with students to make sure this happens. We have a, I believe, 27% graduation rate, which means we have a 73% dropout rate. And that is a number that scares me. I feel like those students that drop out need to be addressed. They need to be reached out to and understand why they're not staying in school. They need to remain. And most of the time, it's not because they're dumb. It's not because they don't want to go to school. It's because life gets in the way. And I believe as a community college, we should be focused on helping our community members fulfill their academic careers. Thank you.
Thank you. So we're now moving on to our second question, and we will start with Mr. Williams for this one. So the question is, what would be your top priorities if you were to become a board member?
Thank you. And I know throughout the evening, I'll be able to add more to this innovation roadmap idea, but that would be priority one. We would need to really look at how we tie together the facilities and how we tie together the programs that we're offering, that they're relevant and that they're meaningful. We need to look at the changing economy. We need to look at the changing landscape. And we need to make sure that we're addressing that we're future-proofing our district and that we're future-looking. And tied within that, 100% the second priority, which probably should be the top priority, is equity for that. Equity of access to those programs, removing the barriers for students to get into those programs, making sure that students know how to get student aid, know what to do after MSJC. So that would be another priority. And maybe an unconventional third priority, which people might not at first think was important, but third priority would be to be a well-governed and run trustee school board. You can't get things done by being one board member. You can't get things done by going out there by yourself. And so that would be one of my big goals, is to persuade the board members for change in this at MSJC.
Thank you. Mr. Gomez-Kraus, same question.
All right, so playing off my previous answer as well, I believe my top priority would be to connect with students. I understand the Board of Trustees serves the entire district, and that means parents of high school students, parents of middle school students who aspire to go to college. But it's those who are already there that we must pay the most attention to. And I feel that there's a great disconnect between the Board of Trustees and the student body, and that does not befall upon the students to make that connection. They have to juggle through work, school, personal life, social life, and maybe even they have children. So it's our job. I, as a trustee, my main focus would be to sit down with every club, sit down with students every day, be it virtually or personally, and make sure that we're hearing what they want. And if it comes to budget, it's give money to people with good ideas. And if those people are students, let them run with it. We have to trust them a little more, because there are some brilliant minds on campus, and that's who I'm fighting for. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Silva, same question.
Thank you. Yeah, you may check out my policy priority videos on silvaformsjc.com, where I elaborate on these thoughts. But let us begin with answering district growth, closing the achievement gap, digital divide, revisiting the MSJC facilities master plan, continued fiscal responsibility, and support of the MSJC call to action to reduce the opportunity gaps for MSJC African American and Black students. So answering district growth. So MSJC finds itself in a unique spot in the California community college system. It is one of the few community colleges that is showing growth. At least it was prior to COVID. So as a board member in a growing K-12 district, I realize answering future growth comes down to two huge components: money and facilities. My experience in managing and understanding both of those components is why I should be your next representative on the MSJC Board of Trustees. Closing the achievement gap and digital divide, that has affected our students during COVID. MSJC was doing some spectacular work in closing both of those areas with a mix of in-person and distance ed offerings in all coursework, but then COVID hit and that changed. Each community college has taken a step back, but with my time on the Beaumont Unified School Board, we have done some spectacular work in answering those needs during COVID, and I'm looking forward to bringing those skill sets to the MSJC Board of Trustees. Revisiting the MSJC facilities master plan and figuring out the future of the past campus and Banning. If there is a commitment by the district to that campus, let us move forward and build a student resource center and increase core course offerings there to lessen the load on the San Jacinto campus and continued fiscal responsibility. That ends my time, so I'll stop there.
Thank you. We'll now move on to the third question, and we will begin with Mr. Gomez-Kraus for this one. So Mr. Gomez-Kraus, the question is, trustee area 01, that district directly serves rural and mountain communities who typically, even before the COVID-19 pandemic, have had trouble accessing economic development, Wi-Fi and cell service, and a general connection and care. What are the ways in which these geographical barriers can be addressed?
Thank you, James. Well, being from the mountain communities, I know these struggles very well. I know that my partner had to commute pre-COVID 40 minutes a day to get to her work. It's 40 minutes there and back. These commutes in particular are very heavy, and the students that I've talked to and dropouts that I've talked to from the mountain communities, that's what kills them the most. It's not being able to go to campus. So distance learning is one of the best options. I've been teaching online for 5 years, and it's not easy. And I was just at a STEM club, and the teachers were saying that they're not getting adapted to it quite easily. Recently, the Board of Supervisors from the CARES Act money took about $10 million to get K-12 students Wi-Fi hotspots. That can be done. That's what we need to be doing with our money. The Board of Trustees needs to be pushing our representatives to access those funds and inject them into these communities that need them the most. Aside from those funds, I mean, we also need to push our supervisors to give us public transport to these rural communities. If they can't be spending money on cars and gas, and it's our responsibility to make sure that they can access our institutions, be it personally or virtually with the highest quality possible. But yeah.
Thank you. Mr. Silva, same question for you.
There we go. I will tell you what we did in Beaumont Unified, and it is something that can be replicated here at MSJC. We completed a grant with Boost Mobile to supply 28 Motorola E6 smartphones to our neediest students with unlimited data for the purposes of schoolwork. In this distance learning environment, access to digital technology is crucial to answering the educational needs of our students. Let us leverage our student need to benefit our students by connecting with regional corporate partners to answer the educational needs of our students. I have done it. I have experience doing it, and that is why I'm the only candidate in this race to have received the endorsement of current trustee, Dr. Sherry Guerrero, and I look forward to your vote on November 3rd.
Thank you. Mr. Williams, same question.
Thank you, James. So not to shy away from controversy, I would tell you that access to technology and internet service is a civil right. Some people will say that technology is just an enabler of rights, that it just helps you participate as a citizen. But I'm going to tell you that, especially now with COVID-19 and the communities that are in the rural area, how are these citizens able to interact? How are they able to register to vote? How are they able to take part in the census? How are they able to participate in telehealth? How are they able to get food and communicate with family members? So I'm going to tell you that it is a civil right. And great examples of what we've done here in the Paris Union High School District is that we help the county supervisors spend that grant money. We have 750 devices, hotspot devices that we bought on that money. And on the other side, with the CARES money, we purchased 20% of our population hotspots. So we have 10,500 students. And so we're actually serving close to 30% of our population with sufficient Wi-Fi to be able to be participants. And I can tell you that our district providing that technology to students is providing that technology to families, because we encourage the parents to be able to use that technology to be full participants, to be able to communicate with families and do telehealth and register for the census. And I can tell you one of the other things that we've done, if I have time, is in our district, we partner with the altruistic Human IT, and Human IT helps us solve real world problems.
Thank you. We'll now move on to our fourth question, and this will be directed for Mr. Silva first. The question is, in your opinion, how can MSJC best address the hardships placed on students who have been severely affected by the COVID-19 pandemic with regards to online learning and internet access, food insecurity, and other living and housing issues?
Well, I would say continued loaning of laptops and hotspots and additional textbook aid to students. Usually we get to count on the fall semester to have our largest number of students, but we're down by 500 students from the previous semester. So, and I should know, after working on community college campuses for 13 years, I would get used to the excitement of the first day of the fall semester with so many students entering a college campus for the first time in their lives. It's really cool. So further support for the Food for Thought Student Pantry, which has been very successful with the couple of weeks on the San Jacinto campus and the couple of weeks on the Menifee Valley campus. And like many of our neighboring colleges, including the college I work for, College of the Desert, having Wi-Fi in the parking lot for students is vital. Telehealth counseling services and virtual support groups and counseling are the best ways MSJC can address the hardships of our students.
Thank you. Mr. Williams, same question.
Thank you, James. So I'm intimately involved with the needs of our community. I spearheaded for our district to actually loan, and we don't know how long they're on loan for, 50 Chromebooks for MSJC. And we issued them to them, and we put them in guest mode for students to be able to access their coursework. And so that was a big plus for the students in the area. I can also tell you that it's extremely important that the students know about food banks and that they know about what the Menifee community cupboard is if you live in Menifee, or the cupboards in the Banning or the Beaumont area, and having also healthy food options. And so it's extremely important, especially during this COVID-19 where people are under a lot of stress, that they're taking care of themselves, that they're eating healthy, that they're sleeping. So I can tell you what's extremely important is that for the underserved populations in our area, that the college reaches out and we become a hub for that. We become a hub of support for them. And that goes to student life, that goes through the political science club, that goes all the way up to the board president, and making sure that the students know where those are at. Because I was told by students that they didn't know their Chromebooks were on loan. And that surprised me because I was the one that got them to them and wanted to make sure that they got them.
Thank you. Mr. Gomez-Kraus, same question for you.
Okay, so yes, ditto to all of the things you guys said. Access to technology and information on food banks is crucial. But one of the things I feel that COVID has most impacted our communities has been the resurgence of xenophobia and hate speech in our communities. So the mental health of the students that will be returning to school is a priority. And Yeah, and teachers as well. The fact that a veil has been lifted on our society, and it started with Orientalism, but now the normalization of hatred in our communities, it's spread to Latinos, to Black communities, to the LGBTQ plus community. And we have to be prepared to be there for our students and guarantee that our institution will be a safe space, and that we will have zero tolerance for any form of bigotry and hatred on campus. And this doesn't mean just waiting around for an isolated incident to occur and reprimanding it. It means taking a bold stance against racism, homophobia, and any other form of hatred you can imagine, and being the board that just says it and makes sure that if anybody does anything that makes a student uncomfortable, or even a staff member, that there will be zero tolerance, and that everybody is welcome to come forth and make sure that the rest of us, the rest of everybody, is safe and content in this learning environment.
Thank you. We will now move on to our fifth question, and Mr. Williams, we will start with you. The question is, in case of a budget cut or a budget surplus, which programs would you see as needing either reductions or increases in funding?
Since we're talking about budgets, I need to be clear that what people seem to not understand it sometimes is that our budget is a direct translation of our values. So if the college wants something to happen and it's a high value, they're going to make it happen. If it's not a high value, they're not going to make it happen. So I can tell you that if you research my values and you look into my record, I can tell you that I have a proven track record here. But I can also let the people know that I don't want to speak glowingly, but MSJC is not in bad shape. They have the bond AA to improve facilities. They got the Temecula campus. And they have, I think, a pretty healthy reserve, which is sort of uncommon in education. And so what I would say was, if we were looking to make an investment, in infrastructure, we should make an investment in people, in human capital, and we should do a better job at hiring students that represent staff that represent the students on campus. And I can tell you that that's extremely important for students to see themselves on campus. That's about it.
Thank you. Mr. Gomez-Kraus, same question for you.
All right, yeah, I would also like to see more teachers that look like students. It's proven that when you see a mentor that looks like you, that has a similar background to yours, we have a 70% Latino population, and the faculty does not represent that. We also have, the Latinos also have one of the highest dropout rates, and there is a correlation there. Something else that I would invest in would be equity-minded teaching. Many times it's not that that individuals are hateful, it's just that we're ignorant. Like I'm a Latino. I know what it's like to grow up in a Latino household. I don't know what it's like to grow up in a Muslim household. I can be inconsiderate unintentionally. So I think it's important that we teach our staff where our students are coming from so they can teach them better, and as well invest in ESL and distance learning, because we're not done. Yes, the pandemic sped up that timeline where we have to teach at a distance more, but distance learning requires constant revision to find out what's working, what's not working. Some students are camera shy and they don't connect with teachers as well, and you have to address that. Find ways to connect with students and ways that teachers can connect as well. So it's a constant back and forth with teachers and students to guarantee that the system is working and improving. So I would invest directly in that.
Thank you. And then Mr. Silva, same question.
So unfortunately, it looks like the 21-22 state budget will be a catastrophe. Projections from the Riverside County Office of Education are dire, to say the least, thanks in large part to the massive number of deferrals in the 2020-21 state budget. So once again, our state legislature and governor are kicking the can down the road. So hard decisions will require a leader who has had to make those hard decisions. And I have done that in my time as a school board member in Beaumont Unified. As someone who has worked in the community college system through multiple economic downturns, including the disaster that was the 2008 financial crisis, I understand the difficult choices ahead. As the next trustee for this area, I will have to evaluate which programs are underperforming and move out from there. Which programs are suffering from low enrollment, which programs serve the least number of students, and which programs have the least amount of full-time faculty. There is one bright spot, as my colleagues have mentioned. MSJC is revered across the state for its fiscal responsibility. MSJC's fiscal accountability and plans for addressing district growth are often pointed to as an example to follow by the Community College League of California, the CCLC. The current administration and board have collaboratively made wise financial moves to preserve the longevity of our district. That is why it is crucial to choose a trustee who knows what a budget looks like, who knows how to live within their means, and who knows how to get the most out of what the taxpayers provide this district. And that's why you must vote Silva for MSJC on November 3rd. Thank you.
Thank you. We're now moving on to our sixth question, and we will begin with Mr. Gomez-Krause on this one. Mr. Gomez-Krause, the question is, a feasible infrastructure is vital for productive and effective learning. When MSJC is able to reopen, how do you plan on addressing the infrastructure of for the facilities on the varying campuses?
Thank you, James. As the previous speaker mentioned, yes, it's going to be a hard year. And that's one of the main reasons I'm supporting Prop 15 on my campaign. We're doing phone banking for Prop 15 alongside the DSA, because we understand that money is not going to come easy next year. And we need to, as we have district growth, we need to have a space to house our incoming students. But for the same reason, that's why I'm also promoting a revision and expansion of the distance learning programs at MSJC. It should not be, well, it is supplemental, but it should not be just an emergency program. It should be something that we can weave into the coursework. So aside from reducing the carbon footprint and reducing the economic stress on the student from having to commute to campus, you can free up space and you can give faculty more time to sanitize the installations. You can free up space so you don't have such crowded classrooms. So weaving online education into physical learning is one of the best ways we can do that if we have a year where we don't have an influx of funding to expand infrastructure.
Thank you. Mr. Silva, same question for you.
So this is why I've supported revisiting the facilities master plan for MSJC. As a member of MSJC's Measure AA Citizens Oversight Committee, I'm intimately aware of the disbursement of the $295 million bond measure generously passed by the voters in 2014. Since that bond was passed, a facilities master plan was assembled quickly thereafter, but has not been reviewed since. Technological integration would be a part of that facilities master plan. I believe that large parts of distance education are here to stay, adapted to the needs of MSJC students, and huge strides to implement best practices are taking place right now. But taking coursework online will be a more positive experience in the future. That positive experience will include more training and preparing staff and faculty for the needs of our students. We need to stop asking if students are ready for college, but if our college is ready for students. That is why it is of the utmost importance to elect someone who has experience in growing district, someone who has experience in developing, collaborating on facilities, master plans, which I have done in Beaumont Unified. This fall 2020 semester has provided a steep learning curve for students, staff, faculty, and administration. Even at the K-12 level, no one has figured out the key to success, but we are all learning and we are all listening to those who have best practices and attempting to implement those practices into our own strategies.
Thank you. Mr. Williams, same question goes to you.
Thanks. I'm going to take this in a little bit different direction and ask some questions. And of course, you're not going to be able to answer, but you can answer at home. Before COVID, did we even know what a public health official was and what their role was and what their responsibility was and how they could put these public health orders and how we would respond to them? We didn't. And did when we had the county supervisors, did we know the county supervisor's role in hiring and maybe firing a public health officer or some of the pressure that's put on them? We didn't. And we're learning that as we go along. And why that's important, even to down to up to the governor or the federal level, are these public health officials, are the governors, are the county supervisors Do they understand how a school works? Do they understand the realities that that were just mentioned here? The realities of a hybrid distance learning, face-to-face environment. Do they understand those realities, and do they understand how that's going to impact us? One of the things is that you should look at is the blueprint for a safer economy. And if you go to just Google blueprint for safer economy, you type in education or college, it sort of gives you sort of guidelines on where you're at, if you're in the purple or in the red or you're in the green. And so it's important that we know these policies, that we know that we're out in front and we're actually advising them on these policies, because sometimes I think that from the government all the way down to the public health official, they might not be making decisions that are in the best interest of our students.
Thank you. We will now be moving on to our 7th question. And this one we will start with Mr. Silva. So the MSJC Equity Pledge recognizes that there are systemic barriers for students of different, and this is a quote, race, ethnicity, gender identity and expression, sexuality, national origin, socioeconomic status, disability or ability, language, religion, age, physical appearance, and intersections of these identities. So the question is, what do you see as possible solutions and ways in which we as a college can not only celebrate diversity and eliminate the systemic equity gaps for students of historically marginalized identities?
So, I was one of the first candidates to come out in support of the MSJC call to action to reduce the opportunity gaps for MSJC African American and Black students. As a Beaumont School Board member, I have helped knock down educational barriers and supported students continuously, providing better opportunities for our students, making sure we are maximizing our community's investment in their schools through fiscal responsibility and facilities management. As a proud graduate of the community college system myself, I understand and sympathize with the day-to-day needs of students. As a school board member, I've always prioritized helping students achieve their dream through the gift of education and increasing educational opportunities for all students. I believe that each student group has a voice that should be listened to. As an MSJC Foundation supporter, my wife and I have made many financial contributions to help students of varying socioeconomic backgrounds, such as Native Americans, Asian, South Asian groups, and American Samoans. Students who are looking to get their first year of college paid for through the MSJC Promise, and students who are looking to find their way in that crucial transition from high school to college learning environments.
Thank you. Mr. Williams, same question for you.
So this is a good question, and actually it's a great question, because the bottom line is we need to dismantle racism, we need to dismantle prejudice, and we need to dismantle it at all levels. And you're going to need a strong board of trustees, because change is difficult. Like I said earlier, sometimes when you have an opportunity to change, you can step forward or you can step back into safety, and we need to step forward. I can tell you that I've been listening for years to the MSJC student groups. I've been intimately involved of student life, back to the art installations when you brought author Duff Brenna on campus, music and dance on all campuses. I've taken the opportunity during closure to take part in almost every student event, Juneteenth, Emoja, LGBTQ, and Latinx celebrations, and taking part in that. And this is just the beginning. In fact, that question was posed to some of those groups on how we can do more this way. And I could tell you the students are on the right track. So myself as a board of trustee member, I'm going to need to support the president, their cabinet, and the faculty in order to have change, to make sure that there's diversity and representation on campus.
Thank you. Mr. Gomez-Kraus, same question for you.
Thank you. So I believe you can't attempt to solve a problem and pretend it doesn't exist. I believe the MSJC Equity Pledge is nicely worded, but I'm always weary of virtue signaling and not taking real action. The Board of Trustees can say they're going to do something, but I've heard them literally say that they will bring in experts on the issues, and the only experts on these issues, the only expert on being a transgender student at MSJC is a transgender student at MSJC. The only expert on being the son of an undocumented parents or an undocumented student at MSJC is exactly that person. So what I'm doing and my whole campaign is centered around is giving everybody a voice and knowing that they can come to me as their trustee, and I will do everything in my power to make sure that they feel safe, that they feel empowered, and that they can thrive in their environment. That's the only way you can do it, speaking to people and giving them a voice, because usually anybody from a marginalized community suffers from some sort of mental health issue because of their marginalization, because there's no resource center to help them through the threat of stereotype, which is something very common for anybody in a marginalized community. So resource centers and open ears and open arms.
Thank you. We're now moving on to our 8th question, and we will begin with Mr. Williams for this one. Mr. Williams, the question is, when seeking student feedback and student engagement, how can MSJC ensure they are actually receiving feedback from a variety of students?
That's a great question. And part of an example of myself listening to students is I've had some heartfelt stories told to me about students that felt they weren't being listened to, students that felt they were being marginalized, students that felt they were being laughed at, students that are very involved in student life. And this was really tugging at my heart. And what I can tell you is that as a board of trustee member, I would want to get the support of the board and ask President Schultz and the cabinet to look into the current structure of the student faculty. And I know that they vote in an advisory role, but I would ask them to look at it a little differently, and maybe that their vote can count more. I don't know if that's a full voting right, but it would be an interesting proposition to ask President Schultz to look into that. But I can also tell you that aside from the examples of students feeling that they were put upon by faculty, you should rest assured that there are some awesome faculty members and staff members at MSJC. I'm attending these events and I'm seeing what they're doing, and I'm seeing what they're doing in counseling and emoji. I'm seeing what they're doing in Latinx, and it is amazing. And that's probably a run of a good reason that I would tell you that I'm extremely proud that I have the endorsement of the MSJC Faculty Association. It was an awesome experience, and I'm glad I have that. I also have the support of 2 current board members who will be board members going forward. And we're going to need that support.
Thank you. Mr. Gomez-Kraus, same question goes to you.
Yeah, I fully support giving the student trustee full voting rights. If that were legally possible, I support it, because I have personally been in the situation where, as I mentioned, I was appointed to the Anza Valley MAC when I was 28, 29. And it was unfortunate that I was listened to as a young person. I was exhibited as the youngest member of the Anza Valley Municipal Advisory Council ever. But whenever I put forth a proposition, whenever I put forth a recommendation, it was sent straight into the trash. I know what it's like to be a young person that's ignored, and you just kept around as an ornament. And unfortunately, the student trustee, there was just a video on YouTube about the student trustees, and they're kind of begging their fellow students to get involved. But that's kind of what this election is all about. From the top down, is young people feel like we're not being listened to, because we're not being listened to. And again, I'm talking directly to the students. That's the only way. And if we can't give the student trustee full voting rights, they have my vote, and I'm with them.
Thank you. Mr. Silva, same question.
So customer service is the key to the longevity of any association or group. So this includes MSJC. I believe that continued dialogue with our partners in student life becomes a key part of how we engage with our most important asset, our students. If we do not have students, we cease to exist as a college, and if students are dissatisfied, we need to know that as a board. As a former student body president and student trustee at a California community college, I asked to have a simple survey added to the ballot for our student government. Anyone who voted had the chance to complete a satisfaction survey about student government and about the college. It was helpful for all stakeholders. Today, A more effective way would be to create a digital survey through a contract with a company called Thought Exchange. We have done this to great success in Beaumont Unified to evaluate community assessments and disaggregate data regarding everything from our pandemic graduation in June to the reopening of schools. It is something we can replicate here at MSJC.
Thank you. We will now be moving on to our 9th question, and we will begin with Mr. Gomez-Krause for this one. The question is, there is a negative stigma that many have about community colleges in general. How can MSJC address the stigma so as not to deter students from enrolling?
I personally feel that, yes, there's a negative stigma around community colleges in general, but Mount San Jacinto Community College doesn't suffer much from it. I think our biggest issues are the economic disparities in our community and the lack of access to campus and education in general. The fact that people can't commute, the fact that we serve Hemet and San Jacinto and Beaumont that have huge homeless and transient populations. These students simply cannot attend college, or if they might be living with a relative one day and they're living with another one in the next week, and now they're 2 hours away from campus. This is very real for many people, and we're not seeing it. Again, I feel like we have to make it worth it for them to finish their education and focus on the dropouts. I think we have people coming in, and I'm more scared of the people who are dropping out for reasons that we can help them, and that should be our focus. That should be the entire focus of the board.
Thank you. Mr. Silva, same question goes to you.
So, in my opinion, this is simply not true. On the various listening tours I've taken throughout this trustee area, each time I've run into proud graduates of either MSJC or other California community colleges, and I'm one of those. The local community college is the best deal in higher education, and due to that fact, your first year is taken care of thanks to the MSJC Foundation, which my wife and I have been longtime supporters of. MSJC continues to be a great value for our region. I understand that some high school students believe they are settling for the local community college, but once they are here, they realize that you cannot beat the price for the opportunity provided. The perception is not the reality. With shorter term degree programs and a greater variety of certificate programs than universities, community colleges have the answer for the present needs of our community. So a comprehensive national poll completed as recently as 2017 by Community College Daily found that 83% of respondents found that their local community college contributes to a strong American workforce. According to a different poll taken by the Community College Review in 2010, 71% of respondents agreed that an education received from a community college is excellent or good. Go to MSJC.
Thank you. Mr. Williams, same question goes to you.
So as a Board of Trustee member, I want to make sure that we have a bold vision for our community college that, like I've said, we've established an innovation roadmap, that we've looked at all the things that I've mentioned earlier, because I would want to know, I'd want to ask the questions. Why are we losing students to the College of the Desert? Why are we losing students to Palomar College? Why are we losing students to RCC? Or why are we losing students? I'd want to ask those questions, but I don't think I'd have to go very far, because if you're not aware, MSJC does have an Office of Institutional Planning and Effectiveness, and they what they do is they actually meet and they task themselves to find out where these students went and why they went and what programs they can offer to bring them back. I would say during the time of COVID, I would ask the college to relook at some of the academic eligibility. I would ask them to look at, if students had to pause their education for a semester or a year, that they didn't lose their place in line, that they were able to still get priority enrollment. Because once we lose them, we might lose them forever. And it was said in another thing yesterday that community college is a great second chance and third chance. And while that's true, I can tell you that community college is way more than that. We're not an also-ran, we're not a beauty contest. we can do awesome things, and we can do things that the four-year colleges can't do.
Thank you. We will now move on to our 10th question, and we will start with Mr. Silva for this one. And this one's a bit of a long one, so hang in there with me. MSJC has maintained roughly 50% retention among students for the duration of a full school year being fall semester to fall semester, for the last 10 years. And this is according to MSJC's own data. And according to the US Department of Education and the website College Compare, MSJC has a 27% graduation or completion rate among students. While both scores are only a few percentage points below the average retention and graduation rate among all California community colleges, how can we best address and improve these shortcomings?
So as an employee of a community college who works in the athletics department, I see this every year. A backlog of student athletes who end up needing a class or two to graduate and transfer. And as student athletes, they have priority registration and they are running into these issues of getting to graduation. This is the problem. It resides in several places, but mostly comes down to getting their science and math coursework completed in a time frame which matches with their ed plan. That is why it is vitally important for students to connect with their counselor and follow the ed plan explicitly. Our own athletic academic counselor at College of the Desert has seen 20 student athletes over the past month, and that's usually a day's work for her. So, and even with coaches encouraging participation, it is difficult considering the COVID-19 pandemic. What ends up happening is students hit the wall of classes that they are unable to get into or programs they need, and they go college hunting. Maybe they finish at Riverside City College or Palomar College or Moreno Valley College or wherever it is to get those last couple of classes to graduate, and we lose out. I believe that the best way we can improve on these numbers is to increase course offerings in areas where there are academic logjams. That means hiring more staff and faculty, full-time and adjunct, to facilitate the academic needs of our students. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Williams, same question goes to you.
Before I start, my comments are not an indictment of the question, James, but when I read the data, this thing has always confused me because I wondered what we're measuring. And I wonder what we're measuring with graduation rates. And you know, community college is a community college. It's not just for high school students. It's not just students going on to a four-year degree. It's for many reasons. And so I would challenge the assumption that we're looking at students are on that sort of path or trajectory, because students have they have their own timeline, and they do need to set things down for a semester because they have life. And so I would challenge the data in a way, but I would also make sure that I would address the data. I would make sure that we are offering innovative and relevant programs, that we're also making sure that we're removing barriers. Not an indictment, but there was a new way that students were having to enroll, and there might have been some backlogs there. There might have been some misunderstanding about how to get the Board of Governors waiver. So we need to make sure that we remove those barriers. And I know that the counseling faculty and staff do a great job. I've met with them, I've spoken with them, and they are kind and caring, and they want to remove those barriers. And I agree with everything I won't say it said, but we need to make sure that we remove those barriers. But I would be remiss to say that if the only thing we were looking at community college was students leaving high school, we're missing the mark.
Thank you. Mr. Gomez-Kraus, same question goes to you.
Okay, so a lot to unpack here. First of all, I think after COVID, it would be a really good moment to encourage other students to help lower level students. It plays very well with the last question. I agree that community college can offer exactly what any other four-year university can offer. It's about the teachers, it's about the community, really. And most of the time it's showing people what they can become that helps you keep going. And I believe that it would be a really good moment to look into programs where we can actually give students paid internships to tutor lower level students who are struggling with their courses, especially with online work. You can do this at the same time or in your home. And it's both a way to encourage students to stay in school. You're supporting working students as well. And as far as the 27% graduation rate, I'm going to get a little abstract. The other day in the morning, my partner saw me drown my omelet with shredded cheese. And she said, "Oh, enjoying your shredded cheese with omelet." And I think we're looking at the data the wrong way. You have to stop talking about 27% graduation rate and really start talking about the 73% dropout rate. Because as a community college, we have to make sure that everybody finishes. So I'm good with those 27%, congratulations. But now we have to work on and focus on that bulk that's not finishing. They are the ones who we need to prioritize.
Thank you.
129.
Thank you. We're now moving on to our 11th question, and we will begin with Mr. Williams for this one. The question is, in what ways can MSJC encourage students to be more involved in their own learning experience?
So that is a question right in my wheelhouse, because I work with teachers to be learning experience designers, building into their coursework that they're not lesson planners, working with college teachers that they're not just doing the didactic lecture, that they're looking at designing the learning experience and having empathy for the learner. And I can tell you that right now with distance learning, these same professors need to build in some continuity of learning. What does continuity of learning look like for the disparate populations of students that are going through stress and trauma when they are to return to school? And what teachers need to do and what instructors need to do is make sure that they build in a learning-centered approach, that bring in a learning-centered approach, that build in that empathy. And I'm not saying that your college professors don't do that, but with the innovation roadmap on making sure that we take that into account, that we are bold and we are brave and we are redesigning learning experience that are flexible, that we're able to design learning experience that don't need to be synchronous, that can be asynchronous and can pick them up at any time, that we build in the flexibility to respect that these people have families and they're working hard. And that would bring in the student voice and the student empathy and point of view for teaching and learning.
Thank you. Mr. Gomez-Kraus, the question is now for you.
Again, playing it off my previous answer, I believe using students to teach other students is a really good way to encourage learning. I, as an educator myself, find that I learn what my knowledge is reaffirmed when I pass it on to someone else, especially if it's something that I've mastered in a sense. I believe that's one way to really bring them in. And it also goes back to what we talked about, teachers that look like you. We need to invest in making sure the faculty looks like the students, or at least understands where the students are coming with equity-minded teaching. These are simple programs. And again, you already have the experts on campus. It's just a roundtable discussion with any subculture of our society and your teachers, so they get where you're coming from. And you mentioned some cool teachers, and yes, I've met some cool teachers from MSJC. And the reason why they're cool teachers is because they get their students. They get where they're coming from. They draw a line of professionalism, but you can joke around with them a little bit because you understand where they're coming from. The best moments for teaching are when your students are your friends, really. And I understand there's a professional boundary that must be kept, but there is a friendship that must be established, and that's the best way to learn.
Thank you. And Mr. Silva, the question is now for you.
Thank you, James. So when I started as a student at Riverside City College, I did not know what I wanted to participate in until I went to a Club Rush event. Suddenly I was involved in this club and that club, and eventually got involved in student government, started writing for the college newspaper. It is difficult to develop a sense of school pride while we're all learning remotely. But I have attended several wonderful MSJC events virtually, and I've either run into Joseph or run into Edison. Sorry, I mentioned names, I apologize, at those events. So there are a lot of them available, and we're all participating in them remotely. So another area is writing for the student newspaper, the Talon. They're always looking for good writers, or at least students interested in becoming better writers. And at this very moment, they are issuing virtual news articles. And if you're interested, you can write for them right now. But when we return to in-person instruction, I would suggest attending a sporting event. The Eagles have 11 sports. Currently, softball and women's soccer are housed on the Menifee Valley campus, while the other 9 sports are at the San Jacinto campus. The Eagles are exciting and are fun, especially since their programs do well year over year. Also, the music and dance and theater arts programs consistently produce some of the best content of any community college. And the art gallery is tremendous. Each of these events are well promoted on the multiple social media outlets MSJC runs, as well as their website.
Thank you. And we are now moving on to our last question, if that's what you want to call this one. And we will begin with Mr. Gomez-Krause for this one. So the candidates will now have their 3 minutes to make any closing statements or tie up any loose ends that they maybe weren't able to previously because of the time. So again, 3 minutes. Mr. Gomez-Krause, we will begin with you.
Thank you very much, James. You did a magnificent job tonight. And I want to thank, again, the candidates for being here, Poli-Sci Club, and the 4 people who you cannot see on YouTube but are running tech support in the background. Very important. How would I like to finish this? Personally, I am running because I believe that times change and we need to change with them. We're at a turning point in history right now where everything is being scrutinized. Everything is unraveling. Our public health system, our public transport systems, our education systems are showing their flaws. I'm not saying that MSJC is flawed beyond repair, but everything in our society needs a revision. Our understanding of race and mixed cultures is changing. Our understanding of sexuality is changing. And that might be an uncomfortable topic for some people, but you have to talk about it because as we progress, it's just going to get better and better. And it's going to keep changing. We have to keep adapting to our society as it changes. We live in especially California, Southern California is such a melting pot of cultures that if you don't do your best, if you're not curious as to who others are, you are going to remain in a shell of ignorance. And I fear that sometimes, and I've heard this from some students at MSJC, that ignorance turns to hate. And when you are hated, you fear for your life or you fear for your safety and you don't want to continue. I was bullied in elementary school for being a foreigner. I was, oddly enough, although I'm Mexican, I was the American living in Mexico. I know what it's like to feel. I was a great student. I was a straight A student, but there were mornings when I didn't want to go to school because it wasn't worth it. It wasn't worth it at all. And you might think that ends in a elementary school playground, but it doesn't. Those microaggressions towards women, towards the LGBTQ plus community, and to every single race that is not Caucasian, and also to the poor community. And that one doesn't know race or sex. If you're just poor, you will be trashed upon by others one way or another. And those microaggressions can destroy your will to go to school. And that's what I've been talking about this whole time. That 73%, a lot of time, it might not even be money. It might not even be the fact that you have a car or not to go to school. It's the fact that you just don't have the drive. And I want to listen. I've been there. So I want to be a voice for those who feel hurt and create a safe space at MSJC so everybody can feel safe, regardless of sex, creed, or sexual orientation. Thank you. Edison Gomez-Krause.
Thank you, Edison. Mr. Silva, you will now have your 3 minutes to make any closing statements.
Thank you, James. And I wanted to personally congratulate you for being named a 2020 Coca-Cola Leader of Promise Scholar. Good job on that. You know, the issues I'm running on are not Republican issues, Democratic issues, or even libertarian issues. They are people issues. Better opportunities for our students, making sure that we are maximizing our community's investment in their college through fiscal responsibility and facilities management, managing our growth to minimize the impact on our student population so that they can transfer in 2 years instead of 3, 4, and 5 years, improving on our associate degree to transfer our ADT numbers to better improve our financial situation through the new funding formula. As I'm out in the community, I hear stories that are encouraging and I hear stories that are disheartening. But the thing that remains the same, each person believes in the value of higher education and they believe in the benefits of attending community college. Regardless of the political party, think about what you want your future for MSJC to be. What do you want to see from MSJC in the next 5 to 10 years? Do you want to see a brighter future that joins communities to form a region and brings back a brighter future for the Inland Empire, then I'm your candidate. If you want a candidate that will be in the community, that will engage and listen, then I'm your candidate. If you want a candidate that has experience in working in the community college system, is ready to start day one, and will go to work each and every day giving his best for those in his trustee area, then I'm your candidate. And if you want a candidate who is going to ask, how does this help students? And ask, how is this going to lower the burden on the taxpayers, all while keeping MSJC on the right path, then I'm your candidate. Now, there are nearly 96,000 voters in this trustee area. That's 96,000 different perspectives. We have two other different perspectives than mine in this community chat we're having right now, and that's okay. We are not always going to agree, but one thing we can agree on is a brighter future for our region through higher education. I'm a lifelong learner, and I want to know your story, and I'm a good listener, and I look forward to your vote on November 3rd. Vote Silva for MSJC and visit silvaformsjc.com. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Silva. We will now move on to Mr. Williams. You will have your 3 minutes to make any closing statements.
Thanks. And thanks, James, for hosting Political Science Club, and thank you for the work that you're doing, and thanks to the candidates for allowing me to listen to you. I can tell you that from all forms of government and in our community and in life, things are disjointed. They're all upside down, and we're going to need a board member who can splice that together, that can help with change and be a change agent and help support people in that change. And it's extremely important that you have a board member that has those kind of values. And I'm that board member who wants to be in the room where it happens, right? So if you're singing The Room Where It Happens from Hamilton, I was successful, I'll drop the mic and head out. But I do have another story I want to tell you before I leave, that I did mention that education can change the trajectory of families in one generation. And I want to tell you a story about a gentleman who, when he was in the Navy, he got out of the Vietnam War, and he went to a community college, and he took a geology class. And he took a geology class, and that professor was so impactful to him, and that he became a lifelong fan of geology. Never went any further. Worked in engineering, worked in aerospace, never went any further. But he had a daughter 18 years later who was looking and struggling and trying to find something to do. And he told her, you know what, that geology professor is still at that community college, and you should take that class. And she did take that class. And that class did change her life and did change the trajectory of her life, because she is actually an MSJC professor in geology. She is a great person. And I was speaking with her yesterday, and I speak with her often. And she did tell me that professor changed her life. And building that personal relationship with that professor changed her life. And I can tell you that that's some of the work that MSJC absolutely needs to do. And it's going to be a struggle, and we're going to need to have frank conversations with the faculty, and we're going to need to have frank conversations about getting our faculty that represents the students, getting our faculty that is there to change lives, that they're not just to phone it in, they're not collecting a paycheck. And that's going to be a struggle, and they're going to need a strong board member to do that. Because community college is not just for the students that are going to a 2-year or a 4-year. It is for the community, because it did change that man's life, and it did change that professor's life. And I'm here to support you. I'm glad that we had this meeting. It was awesome to learn from you. Go to williamsformsjc.com if you'd like to learn more about me. Follow me on Twitter. I have the endorsement of my dog and Baby Yoda. I also have the endorsement of a wide range of coalition of people who aren't from space or from the animal planet. And I look forward to meeting you all again.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. And thank you to all the candidates for participating in tonight's forum. That marks the end for us tonight. But again, I want to thank all of the candidates for participating and abiding by all the rules and guidelines. And I want to thank Student Life and Development for helping coordinate this event. Thank you to Taylor for keeping our time management on track for tonight, because otherwise I would have been fumbling with my phone trying to ask questions, and that would have been good. And thank you to everyone else who was in the Political Science Club for doing all the groundwork, all the legwork to get this event up and running. And again, thank you to everyone who is watching this wherever in the virtual universe you are watching this from. Because again, without you, this event wouldn't mean anything. So thank you so much.